We're going to start that session by bringing Revenera's Paul Bland to the stage, and he'll share some of the drivers for Elastic Access, the use cases where we see it having the most impact, and the benefits for software producers and your end customers. Then we're going to bring Steve Dell from Ansys on to share his insights and experience with Ansys Elastic licensing. And throughout the session, Revenera's Ravi Trivedi will be available in the chat to answer your questions, and then we'll finally bring him on stage with Paul and Steve for some final Q&A. So with that, let me hand things off to Paul. Paul?
Thank you, Michael. This session is about Revenera's new dynamic monetization, which will become available around about the middle of this year. It's the first, it's going to be introduced with a first monetization model, which we're calling Elastic Access. Elastic Access is being introduced to provide a fresh dimension to your monetization capabilities amidst a developing and increasingly complex monetization landscape. I want to identify some of the characteristics of that landscape and then explain what Elastic Access is, and then to consider some of the contexts in which Elastic Access could address monetization problems that software vendors face. One aspect of this monetization landscape is the way in which software is deployed. Last year's report in the Revenera Monetization Monitor found that 57% of respondents believe that SaaS deployments will increase as a percentage of overall license revenue, while only 15% believe on-prem will decline, which, when you look at it, contrasts with the idea that software deployment is going to make a wholesale shift from on-prem to SaaS. What we can infer instead is that on-prem and SaaS, and consequently the middle ground of hybrid, which connects the two together, really are expected to be part of the software deployment landscape and its monetization for a significant time to come. To cite words that Mark just used, SaaSification continues, but hybrid will be active for years. Elastic Access is also introduced to a market that spans complexities of scale. From software vendors with a single approach to deploying their software, maybe just single product as well, through to the most complex organizations who employ a range of deployment models and monetization models, which probably span multiple divisions or subsidiaries through various M&A activity. This new monetization model, Elastic Access, will help right across the spectrum, including those perhaps looking for ways to rein in the complexity a little, for example, by reducing SKU proliferation. These two aspects of the monetization and deployment landscape inevitably lead us to complexity in the realm of business and monetization models themselves. We've seen, as has already been mentioned today, a clear movement from perpetual licenses towards subscription. Perpetual persists in many places, but the focus is very much on subscription and renewable revenue. But in addition, an emphasis on user-based access has been driven by the growth of hybrid and SaaS, and is also applicable in the on-prem case. It's either replacing or supplementing the historic focus on device-based licensing. Vendors want to monetize individual access or shared access and have tools to manage the way users access the software and the way groups of users access the software. Lastly, we see a blended consideration of different license models where concurrent meets metered and consumption charging And even some elements of monetizing by outcomes, perhaps to address the point that was just made about matching revenue to the variabilities of cost generated by the use of the software. So all these four models really kind of combine together to form a multifaceted approach to achieving revenue goals. So it's into this landscape that we're introducing Dynamic Monetization's Elastic Access. How does Elastic Access work? Well, Dynamic Monetization itself is the title that we're giving to a newly introduced service which will help technology companies to bring in more flexible approaches to monetization across this complex landscape, wherever software or devices are deployed in a connected way. The first monetization model to be provided is Elastic Access, which enables you to do a number of things. Primarily, it's about selling metered tokens. The model that Mark just referred to as prepaid consumption credits with drawdown. So customers buy what we're calling metered tokens. You can call them whatever you like. We find it a useful label. These metered tokens are sold to customers, which they can then exchange for access to the technologies in your portfolio. The sale is not of specific products or even technologies, but of metered tokens which are consumed when the technologies are accessed. They're often also referred to as software credits, maybe, or software currency units. But having sold these by means of a rate table, you can set the token price for each item that might be used. That might be features, the kind of features that you've traditionally made available through licensing. It might be entire products, or it might be related capabilities, perhaps system resources that are consumed in the use of that software. There's really no limit to what can be charged for using the tokens and the rate table. Pricing and packaging changes can be achieved very simply by modifying the rate table on the fly without any entitlement redeployment necessary, or even or you could even line up changes in the rate table to take effect at a predetermined date or and time in order to kind of plan and then launch at a specific point in time. And then finally, the service Elastic Access provides real-time, fine-grained usage data representing each token consumption, which enables insights, what's just been called value intelligence, from which you can draw a number of benefits: exact tracking and charging of what's being consumed, high levels of visibility for your customers, and data to help you plan, to make those kinds of intelligent business decisions necessary to refine what you're doing and take it further. So how does Elastic Access work? It begins with your customer buying an entitlement, not to software products, but for a number of Elastic or metered tokens. This is immediately available via Elastic Access, so that your software running for your customers can request items from the rate table. Elastic calculates the cost of that use and charges it to the metered tokens purchased. This charging could be a one-time charge, or it could be a repeated charge every hour over time until the application has finished whatever activity is being engaged in. Each charging event then is pushed real-time to the data warehouse to use in a number of different ways, to feed into an analytics view, perhaps to illustrate usage over time, building reports for your customers so that they can understand and apportion their software spend. Importantly, to provide you with actionable data to feed back into the product lifecycle and sales cycle renewals process to identify cross-sell and upsell opportunities. I'm now going to look at some scenarios in which elastic access will help to overcome some of the business challenges with clear monetization benefits. As a software producer, one of the things you want to provide for your customers could be access across your portfolio. In addition, with the ability for your customers to be able to ride the peaks and troughs of seasonal or project needs. One challenge that you might be faced with, given these goals, is that it's easy to miss cross-sell and upsell opportunities because it's hard for your customers, perhaps, to access the portfolio without careful upfront deliberation. You might find that a large and complex portfolio tends not to cater for small and medium-sized enterprises, but particularly customers find that peak burst activity is very hard to predict and expensive to cater for, especially through formal subscriptions. So the consequence is often that their products or deadlines are impacted. Or alternatively, they have expensive unused licenses sitting around for long periods of time doing nothing in order to be ready to provide the headroom for these peak periods. So with elastic access rate tables being so easily configured, you can lower the barriers to customers experiencing access to your portfolio. So that with a single purchase that they've already made, they've settled the financial decision, and now they just have an operational choice of which software to use as the need arises. During peak times, the gap between their subscriptions to specific software and their momentary needs can be filled in an elastic way by consuming elastic tokens, and then apportioned to the business units consuming them or the projects that gave rise to that consumption. In that way, matching capacity with demand while avoiding wasted licenses during quiet periods of the month or the quarter. And you can focus your pricing strategy dynamically refining to the optimal level to ensure that while catering for the predictability your customers need, you're still maximizing your own opportunities. This diagram shows how elastic access can provide on-demand headroom for peak activity. Your customers continue running because they've got that capacity to fill those peak needs. They can continue running at the capacity of their teams, not the capacity of their license allocation, simply by blending their specific software purchases with the elasticity of metered tokens. So how do you give your customers friction-free access to premium features? Traditionally, this might have been achieved via a premium packaging approach with top-level grouping of features and negotiated contracts for smaller numbers of the most expensive packages, and then experimenting by moving features up and down the portfolio would need very careful planning and perhaps some kind of significant lead time in order to deploy those packaging changes. And what's the consequence? Often missed upsell opportunities. With elastic access, these premium features can be factored into the rate table as add-ons to the main software. Their use is charged at the appropriate rate. Customers have low friction access to them, enhancing their experience, and that assists the next round of upsell discussions. Any number of add-ons can be provided in this way, with new purchases needed for occasional or frequent use. It's in the nature of SaaS to need to and to be able to seamlessly roll out new capabilities. So why not also seamlessly roll out the revenue benefits of those capabilities? SaaS enables frequent and early deployment, and the revenue targets associated with that look for quick availability of those features' value. Often rigidity in pricing structure makes it hard to respond to customer requirements, and lack of data makes it difficult to track what has happened in the software's use. A lack of data centrality prevents comparisons and also prevents reliable conclusions or business decisions. Not only are the new offerings quickly made available to customers with elastic access, so elastic access enables quickly making offerings available, the data it provides on the way meter tokens are consumed provides immediate insights into customer use of the software, and also levels of longer term adoption, which really assists with the renewals process and providing indicators for sales forecasts. Not knowing how customers are using products or their features or services means that the impact of product changes is not known without perhaps individual discussions with customers. And therefore, opportunities can be missed, opportunities for growth within and beyond the market. A long lead time for packaging changes can result in growth of SKU catalogs in an attempt to provide variations as early as possible. And therefore a long sales cycle as customers wade through all the possibilities, trying to find the right thing to meet their business needs at now and at some unknown point in the future. In addition, most product managers need a quick way to see the results of changes to products so that they can be agile, not only in the product development cycle, but also in its monetization. Elastic access provides quick feedback on the way changes made to the software itself and perhaps your pricing structure interact with customer preferences. And it does that because every single consumption event is reflected real time into the data warehouse. With the flexibility of elastic access rate tables, SKUs can be managed. If required, they could be simplified as well, with relatively little effort. And the ease with which offerings can be added to the rate table allows new items to be taken to the market very quickly. And all these things add up to assist with the whole cycle of agile product development and monetization. This slide draws together in summary the benefits that have really been incorporated into those last four use cases, and the benefits accrue through elastic access both to the producer and to the buyers of software. A producer experiences flexibility through elastic access, allowing them to sell software and technologies in the way that customers want to buy. It reduces the friction that producers experience, usually through barriers for small and mid-sized enterprises by providing easy access to the software portfolio. The dynamic effect on price and package management gives producers the ability to make rapid changes to the way they're building and monetizing their software in order to get quick feedback to test and experiment. And the cost optimization allows them to align price more directly with value offered and value experienced. It lowers the risks for producers of potential overuse of software, and the detailed usage data and reports allow quick identification of upsell and cross-sell opportunities. From the buyer's perspective, these same benefits exist with different consequences. So for the buyers, the flexibility allows them to exercise on-demand access and scalability. Reduced friction helps them to streamline their whole procurement process, avoiding project delays and actually reducing the time to decision, because the financial decision is kind of separate from the specific technology decision. Dynamic pricing and package management improves their overall experiences because it enlarges their choices. Cost optimization operates from their perspective as well as the producers, where they can fill the gaps, make baseline purchases of specific software and have elastic access available to fill the gaps. And the usage data allows them really to treat their expenses as an operational process rather than periodic capital expenditure. It lowers the risk for them because they're minimizing the waste of unused licenses. It also allows them to be very sure that they are maintaining compliance with whatever agreements they've signed, because the data that accumulates in the data warehouse can be readily made available to them through usage reports. And those detailed usage reports allow them to allocate costs to specific business units, to specific departments, to specific projects or activities. So we've got a range of benefits in elastic access, which either used in isolation or in blend with other monetization models really enable all these kind of problem-solving opportunities for producers and customers. So returning to complexity at scale, elastic access is clearly of benefit at the high complexity end of this diagram, where multiple products, multiple monetization models, and multiple divisions within companies mean that the portfolio itself is highly complex, and the elastic access provides ways to access those products more flexibly, more easily, to meet goals for both producers and buyers. But across the whole spectrum, the opportunity for optimizing costs and meeting seasonal or project-based high demand is meaningful whether you've got a simple deployment model or range of products or highly complex. That need exists right across the spectrum. Elastic access then joins Revenera's entire monetization platform. We still have our entitlement management solution, which gives suppliers a way of streamlining the back office processes to support the whole quote to cash range of activities and rapidly recognize the revenue that they get from selling software. So underneath that, we've now got a range of monetization services. We have our on-prem services, which have been around for a long time and will continue to be around for a long time, both with FlexNet Publisher, which has for many years provided node-locked and concurrent models licenses for running software both on-prem and in the cloud. More recently, in a relative way, FlexNet Embedded has enabled really many monetization models and self-service capabilities to customers for running, again, software either on-prem or in the cloud. FlexNet Embedded more recently extended itself into cloud monetization, where we provided API-driven cloud monetization technology for connected software or devices, which was really aimed at the need to remove local license servers, and the API-driven started to address SaaS use cases. So alongside cloud monetization, we now join our new cloud capabilities in dynamic monetization, which again is API-driven, enabling flexible monetization models, again for connected, and allowing now through elastic access rapid packaging changes real-time usage data. So the range of monetization services grows. So I hope that information about Elastic Access has been helpful. And Michael, we're going to return to you for any questions.
Perfect. Thank you, Paul. And great intro to our next guest on stage. Welcome, Steve Dell from Ansys. It's great to have you here at Soft Summit. Maybe you can start with a quick intro and tell us a little bit about what you do at Ansys.
Sure. Yeah. So I am the head of software licensing at Ansys. So Paul mentioned, of course, FlexNet Publisher, Dynamic Monetization, Cloud Monetization. My team at Ansys, we do use a number of these technologies, but fundamentally as a software company, obviously the way in which we make most money is through software monetization, and so my team are responsible for enabling that.
Fantastic. Thanks, Steve. And Ansys has offered what you call Ansys Elastic Licensing for about 5 years now. Can you tell us why you implemented it and how that fits into your overall business model?
Absolutely. So it's funny. It's funny how everything we talk about hybrid, we talk about SaaS. These challenges have existed for several years at this point, probably more than several years, in fact. But fundamentally, the challenges themselves, everybody's at a different point in that journey. And so for Ansys, Elastic Licensing fit a need that was happening both because of a desire to support cloud, but also because fundamentally barriers to adoption of software are they're all over the place, really. Whether it's a monetary barrier, whether it's basically a decision barrier. I've got 2 products. I've got people who need to use both products. I can't necessarily justify purchasing either one, or it could be 10 products. It could be 50 products, as the case may be. So Elastic Licensing, we started on that journey because we wanted to fit that particular need. Fundamentally, people like the concept, and this has actually been quite proven with Elastic Licensing, they like the concept that they don't have to make a committed decision into one product or another. Elastic Licensing provides them with access to nearly all products using a reference currency, if you will, as Paul had mentioned, and a rate table. The rate table defines exactly what the products will cost on a per hour basis, and you spend down the elastic currency that you purchased.
And Elastic Licensing isn't the only model that you offer. You obviously offer other monetization models. How does that all fit together?
Absolutely. So it's definitely one you can purchase among many. Everything from a lease, where you think about levels of commitment, if you will. We have traditional, if you will, software leases that might span 1 year, might span 3 years, that sort of thing. Elastic Licensing actually fits a really interesting profile on this front because it both enables shorter term access in a very flexible way, but it also supports business scenarios that would have been more difficult to support. So think about consultants, maybe the easiest example to think about. A consultant fundamentally might use different pieces of software based on contracts. How do you solve that particular problem? We also have other customers who, in their journey into cloud-based services, they're wondering, okay, we've got this on-premises software, or on-premises hardware rather, we've got SaaS-based, cloud-based hardware. How do we bridge those divides in a way where the cloud-based hardware is costing us money, whereas the on-premises hardware, from an infrastructure perspective, like Mark had talked about, is sort of it's fixed. We bought it, and that was sort of the end of it. When you think about this in the context of using software at the same time, especially if software is what you're primarily using on that hardware, you've got to be able to bridge those things. The same benefits that one gets out of cloud access, like high performance computing, using more machines at any given moment in time, reflects with the benefits of elastic licensing, where I need extra licenses for that period of time.
Thanks, Steve. And I assume, like most things, Mark said, change is hard. Share some of the challenges that you had in bringing this new elastic model to bear.
Definitely, yeah. So I mean, so elastic access, especially depending on where you are on your cloud journey, it's a good first stop because it both enables you to build something web-based, but also deliver something new that your customers weren't able to get before. So you've got normal issues like, how do you price your products? Do I have appropriate legal language in place? Those sorts of things, which is of course true for any web-based licensing solution. But you also have other questions like, how do I enable my customers to see their data? Because that usage data actually enables future sales, both of elastic licensing or elastic access, as the case may be, but also perhaps longer term commitments that make more sense for those customers. Oh, wow, this one product is getting a whole lot of usage. We probably should just purchase, a regular lease, as an example. That data is super important both to the customer and, of course, to the vendor. The good news, I just mentioned this real quick, is for us on this journey, Revenera has been a great partner as we work through these challenges.
Always good to hear, but thank you. And so actually, so as folks in the audience may be considering, dipping their toes into the elastic pool, who are some of the stakeholders that you involved in making things happen? And who would you recommend that folks band together to move a program like this forward?
Sure. So product management as a broad statement is probably a very obvious one that you would involve, but it's not just one product manager, if you will, right? Because fundamentally, if you're using elastic access to provide multiple product areas at the same time, um, you've got to have multiple product managers involved. And so, in fact, if you've got some higher level buy-in on the direction, that's useful because it enables those various product managers to come together and sort of hammer out, as an example, what the pricing might look like. Of course, you have regular pricing already for other types of models, and you might use that as an initial reference. But elastic access also permits the possibility of thinking about your products in terms of how much they get used, and do they get used in short bursts? Do they get used for long periods of time? And that can affect pricing. So product management's a big one. The other side of the equation is sales. Obviously, if you introduce something and nobody buys it, that's a problem. So we need to make sure that we've empowered sales, but sales understands how it fits into that broader picture. And in our experience, there are definitely sales account managers who are already aware of this need. We found that time and again. So we found some initial champions on the sales side to help us get through those initial conversations, to help us communicate with other account managers about the value.
Yeah, and that's a great point about sales and explaining to them what those differences are. And what's the reaction of customers been so far? What sort of feedback have they provided you?
Yeah, so this part won't come as a surprise. Customers really enjoy the flexibility. I mean, that is at some level what you're selling. You're selling this flexibility, and already it is the case that customers know that they are to some degree wasting licenses one way or the other, or they're not empowering some of their people to do the things that they need to do. So this flexibility has been very well received. The fact that they can use it both on premises and in the cloud, that's a huge deal, because again, everybody's on their own journey towards whatever hybrid model, or full cloud, or wherever they might be in that journey. The other thing I would point out is this sheer amount of insight one gets from the data. That unlocks conversations that they weren't having before. maybe they didn't have a full appreciation or realization of who was using software and to what degree. And in fact, maybe some of those business units, as an example, if you think about showback concepts, this is how much you used in a given month. That tends to be quite eye-opening for certain groups, where they begin to realize, oh wow, we're using software to a degree we didn't realize. What additional training do we need to provide to our teams? That sort of thing. That becomes an important effect of that type of data. And of course, the vendor knows that information as well and can initiate those conversations.
Fantastic. And of course, because I'm in product marketing and words are constantly being thrown at me, we're talking about this as elastic access. You call it elastic licensing. There are other terms out there that we've seen from other vendors, flexible credits, consumptive tokens. Any thoughts you have on, does that, in your experience dealing with end customers, do all those words mean the same thing to them? Or do they really understand the concept too? And it's really just up to vendors, to tell customers what they're getting.
To your point, coming up with the name is perhaps as difficult as implementing the technology. It's interesting. Everybody comes with different opinions. I would say, broadly speaking, elastic is the term that in my experience tends to resonate the most. Tokens, just historically, has an interesting duality in terms of terminology, but the concept of metered tokens, understanding that word metered is the most important word one can use there, that's pretty clear. Metered is another word that I would say, broadly speaking, is well understood. But what metered doesn't necessarily say that elastic does is that level of flexibility one achieves as a result of having something like this.
Yeah, great points. And, as you well know, as a source of much debate among marketing and product teams across the industry. So let's bring Ravi back on stage. Well, actually, bring Ravi out of the chat and onto the stage. Ravi, I know that you have seen some questions coming in the chat. Want to share some of those? And we can. You can start, and then Paul and Steve, feel free to chime in and add some color.
Yeah. So I see the question say, do you see the dynamic monetization elastic access being used in conjunction with existing legacy licensing that may be in place? Absolutely, right? So this services, the monetization service that we are talking about, is built on having a RESTful interface. So if you have, let's take the most traditional FlexNet publisher there, Paul showed a diagram that's showing you a lease capacity that is a license sold to perpetuity. But then if you need to provide on-demand access, then you could really build upon this REST APIs. When the FlexNet publisher license server runs out of capacity, then it's just doing a call out to dynamic monetization to consume these tokens, right? This is what we call on-demand capacity, one aspect of dynamic monetization. So absolutely, because it's being built on cloud native technology, always connected and through RESTful interfaces, it's easy to build in your consumption model over your existing technology. And there was also a question on, could you configure Elastic capability to only measure and report first before enforcing pricing, right? Yeah, so on this, right, I'd say, we heard Mark talk about how a post-use chargeback could be tricky, but nevertheless, if you see a business need for this, do get in touch with us. Right now, the Elastic access is consumptive, meaning you buy certain prepaid tokens and consume it. But in the first release, you don't have the post-use chargeback model. But I must say, the way the team is working, they're building on how we respond to market needs quickly, how we continuously improve the product. So it won't be difficult for us to add a model that is going to help you post-use chargeback kind of situation. Yeah.
Yeah, and Steve, I know you had mentioned, obviously this is one of many models that you offer. Any other color that you want to offer to that specific question?
Yeah, I think it's to Ravi's point. It is absolutely. You've seen the graph about the elastic part versus the sort of the fixed component. It works quite seamlessly on that front. And I would even say whether you're thinking about this in the context of prepay, post-pay, those sorts of things. From a general journey perspective, I think the more important part is to be on the journey. You will find perhaps with time that though you went one direction, that there's value in the other direction as well. And inherently the same solution, the same implementation, if you will, supports both concepts.
Great.
Yep.
Ravi, other questions that you saw in the chat?
Yeah, so 3 meanings to describe what elastic access does, and 3 most important information to tell someone who doesn't know elastic access, right? So first thing first, cross-portfolio need, on-demand access, reducing barriers for your end customers to purchase your products. That's the first thing I'll say that elastic access enables you to do. The second thing is the flexibility you get as a producer on using the rate tables to configure how you want to sell certain feature, product, technology, or a service, right? Without going through a whole loop of SKU definition and all those complexities, right? So that rate tables is another one. The third thing to take away is how your customers get flexibility to use it and also view the detailed real-time usage information that feeds back obviously into your rapid packaging changes. You will see customer utilizing your elastic tokens in certain demand model, and you would want to change your token prices or introduce new related features. So yeah, I'd say these are the 3 takeaways. If you wanted to talk about elastic access to anyone in your organization.
Thanks, Ravi. And Paul, Steve, anything you'd want to add to that?
I think everyone would have their own 3 takeaways. For me, my 3 takeaways: prepaid consumption credits with drawdown. Secondly, flexibility to change pricing models quickly. And thirdly, availability of usage data to provide rapid feedback. So can I just pick up on the chargeback idea as well? Steve, you just said that actually the implementation as it is could support both models, right? The ideal you've experienced with your customers and the preference is they want to pay up front. They don't really want a conversation, and neither do you, after the event of settling up what they owe. However, you could take that approach. How would you see that work with the implementation, the capabilities as they are, as described today?
Definitely. So my first thought would be you're effectively, when you think about post-pay, to some degree, you're giving somebody a line of credit, if you will. And you could imagine that you might preload their account with a certain quantity. And over time, as they burn that down, basically the vendor now has some level of responsibility to monitor that, which you would be doing anyway because it's inherently post-pay. And you're recharging that account as time goes on, both because they paid for those credits and because you see them burning at a rate that wasn't necessarily what you expected. But of course, it would initiate that would initiate a conversation with the customer. If they were, I don't know, if they were burning 50,000 a month and you only thought they were going to burn 5,000, you'd probably want to talk to them about that, as an example. But it does, the one benefit of post-pay is that it does enable much more frequent conversations around what's being used, with definitely some challenges, as you outlined, Paul.
Fantastic.
Yeah, and I could imagine that working with, just a flat rate, maybe a kind of peppercorn rate, right? One token per consumption. Really easy to understand data.
Definitely.
Awesome. Well, thank you, gentlemen. Paul, great intro to this. Not to get cheeky with the words, it obviously is very dynamic, and as the conversation has shown, very elastic in how we're thinking about this and how different vendors are applying it. Steve, thank you so much for sharing your experience. You definitely bring a lot to the table, so really appreciate you sharing that with the audience. And Ravi, thank you for doing yeoman's work in the chat and coming back to us with the questions. So thank you, gentlemen.